Let me start with a simple question. What happens when a government shuts off the lights, kills the internet, floods the streets with blood, and still loses control? Because that is exactly where this story begins. Not with protesters shouting in the streets, not with slogans, not even with gunfire. It begins with panic behind palace walls. For 100 hours, Iran went dark. No electricity, no internet, no official explanations that made sense. The Tehran regime believed darkness would save it, that if the people couldn't see, couldn't speak, couldn't share, the uprising would suffocate quietly. That calculation failed. Official numbers later claimed 646 people were dead. But encrypted field reports, satellite data, and off-grid communication networks told a much darker story. One that points to more than 3,000 lives lost. That gap between official figures and reality is not a rounding error. It's a confession. And then came the threat that changed everything. A prosecutor, speaking with the confidence of someone who had never truly been afraid, said the words out loud, "We will hang everyone, not investigate, not prosecute." The regime expected fear. Instead, it lit a fuse, because something critical had already shifted. The streets were no longer panicking. The panic had moved quietly, decisively into the bedrooms of generals. This was no longer a protest cycle. This was not chants and tear gas and curfews. This was something far more dangerous to power. This was regime collapse behavior. Here's the moment analysts will study for years. When communications were cut, people didn't retreat. They reorganized. When shots were fired, the response didn't wait for tomorrow. It didn't wait for international condemnation or emergency UN meetings. The response was immediate. And here's where the story takes a turn many outside Iran still struggle to process. The people stopped running. The generals started moving. And not confidently. They fled. Police stations burned. Security offices were abandoned. Entire zones slipped beyond state control. But what made this different? What made it unprecedented was what followed. Targets. Not random rage, not mob violence, names, addresses, patterns. This is where the narrative becomes uncomfortable, especially for anyone still pretending this is just unrest. Because what unfolded wasn't chaos. It was coordination. Street by street, avenue by avenue, homes were identified. Once confirmed, a symbol appeared. A red X painted on doors and walls. Not graffiti, not a threat shouted into the air, a mark. Anyone familiar with modern conflict knows what that means. This wasn't symbolic anger, it was a target designation. The first major confirmation came from Mashhad, an ideological stronghold of the regime. Major General Javad Keshav, a powerful figure, not just military. He sat at the crossroads of enforcement, money laundering, and repression. A man surrounded by security, protected by layers of intelligence, routes planned down to the second. And yet, his movement plan was tracked. Not hours later, not days, seconds. That detail matters, because tracking a general's secure convoy is not something angry civilians do by accident. It requires internal leakage, someone talking, someone inside breaking rank. Keshav was neutralized in an attack linked to resistance networks. With his death, one of the IRGC's logistical and financial arteries in Mashhad collapsed instantly. No announcement could hide that. No blackout could erase it. Then came Ilam, Colonel Marty Rahimi, accused of ordering the shooting of 10 protesters in Malik Shahi on January 3rd.
Iran's unrest turns deadly in a new and shocking way. An IRGC colonel has been beaten to death by anti-regime protesters, marking a dramatic escalation in the country's rapidly spiraling crisis. The killing underscores how Iran's streets are no longer just scenes of protest, but battlegrounds of revenge, rage, and collapse of control. The victim, IRGC Colonel Marty Rahimi, was reportedly responsible for ordering troops to open fire on protesters in the western town of Malik Shai on January 3rd, killing around 10 people. Survivors later identified his residence. Protesters tracked him down and carried out what activists describe as a retaliatory killing. Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi rejected the idea that the unrest constitutes protests at all. Instead, he labeled it a terrorist war, claiming armed groups are targeting police stations, government buildings, and businesses. He says authorities possess audio recordings allegedly ordering militants to fire on civilians and security forces, claims activists strongly dispute.
What happened next tells you everything you need to know about the state of the regime. Rahimi wasn't attacked in a riot. He was followed. Survivors traced him to his home. Think about that for a moment. A colonel, someone trained to suppress, to intimidate, to dominate, was tracked by civilians who had just watched their friends die. This wasn't revenge driven by chaos. It was discipline born from rage. And that distinction is what keeps power structures awake at night. Because once people learn they can identify you, find you, and reach you, uniforms stop working. The regime scrambled to respond. Blackouts, denials, stories that sounded almost comedic in their desperation. But satellite imagery doesn't lie. Leaked videos don't disappear just because the internet is slow. Homes and offices tied to senior figures were hit with precision. Firearms at close range, controlled explosives, targeted strikes. This did more than remove individuals. It broke something far more valuable: belief. An army does not survive on weapons alone. It survives on faith. Faith that commanders are protected, that loyalty is rewarded, that the chain of command is solid. That faith cracked. Lower-ranking soldiers began asking a dangerous question. If the generals can't be protected, what about us? Once that question spreads, discipline collapses fast. Not with a bang, with silence, with hesitation, with refusal. The Iranian police understood this shift immediately, which is why police stations became targets, not as buildings, but as symbols. Take Babel, an organized raid. Doors forced open. Political prisoners and young protesters were released. Then the building was burned, not out of celebration, out of finality. That fire didn't just destroy concrete, it erased the regime's ability to punish in that area. No detention, no intimidation, no paperwork, no fear pipeline. In Hamadan, barricades transformed neighborhoods into zones the regime simply avoided. Flags from Iran's pre-revolutionary era appeared, not as nostalgia, but as a declaration. We are choosing a different identity. These barricades didn't just block roads, they blocked propaganda, they blocked supply lines, they blocked authority itself. And once authority stops moving freely, it stops existing. Here's the uncomfortable truth for Tehran. Each eliminated commander isn't just a loss, it's a domino. Command fractures, trust evaporates, units hesitate, orders slow down, soldiers disappear. This isn't about one uprising, it's about structural paralysis. The IRGC, the backbone of the regime, is facing something it was never designed to handle: fear directed upward. And perhaps the most terrifying possibility for those in power is this: what happens if the IRGC doesn't just weaken, but withdraws loyalty? Because when belief dies, regimes don't fall gracefully. They hollow out, quietly, from the inside. We are now seeing a psychological collapse that goes far beyond street riots. This is where the regime's most loyal forces, the ones who were supposed to be untouchable, begin to falter. Mutiny is no longer a distant threat. It is real. Lower-ranking soldiers are hesitating. Militias are questioning their commanders. The very people who were trained to enforce fear are suddenly asking, if the generals can't survive, what hope do we have? And that's the first domino to fall. It's not just fear that's cracking the regime, it's the cash flow. The IRGC generals aren't only military figures, they're the heads of massive economic networks. controlling trade in banned substances, oil smuggling, and money laundering. Take away the generals, and you dry up the money that feeds militias and funds foreign adventures. Hezbollah, less loyal. Assad's regime, less supported. Every unpaid soldier and militia fighter is a ticking time bomb of defection. Ideology only works when salaries are flowing. When money stops, loyalty evaporates like morning mist, and the crackdown on generals like Keshavarz, that's exactly what's happening. A few key removals, and suddenly the regime is watching its financial lifelines snap one by one. The offensive in cities like Babel is another game changer. The burning of police stations and the freeing of prisoners isn't just destruction, it's a declaration. The people are saying, "We are no longer afraid. You fear us now." Once one police station falls, the idea spreads like wildfire. It's a template for resistance. The fear that once held society in check has flipped, and now the hunters are hunted. That's why the police chief shouting, "We will go to the very end," isn't intimidation, it's a cry of helplessness. The psychological shift here is irreversible. It is historic. Fear has changed sides. For the first time, the elite in Tehran tremble, not the protesters in the streets. Enter Crown Prince Raza Pahlavi, whose declaration of a new phase in the uprising didn't just mark a target, it gave vision and legitimacy. Suddenly, protesters were not acting randomly. They had a political roadmap. They were not just rioting, they were building a leaderless, organized revolutionary movement, and the flags of a pre-revolutionary Iran waving in Hamadan, that is symbolic genius. The 40-year ideological grip of the regime is crumbling. A new order is already forming, not just on the streets, but in the minds of the people. And the army's silence? Crucial. Their refusal to intervene against citizens targeting generals shows the deep cracks within Iran's dual military system. The Revolutionary Guard and the regular army have historically had tensions. Today, that tension is working against the regime, leaving it isolated, trapped, and vulnerable. Now, let's zoom out. If Iran can't protect its generals in Tehran, how can it support Assad in Syria or Hezbollah in Lebanon? Every act of resistance at home is a geopolitical earthquake abroad. Allies see the drying of the money stream, the collapse of command, the systematic breakdown of control, and they start protecting themselves. Iran's decades-long regional influence, shaky. Its reliability as a partner, gone. And for regimes elsewhere, think Russia, China, North Korea, this is a warning shot. Walls, generals, intelligence networks. Obsolete against a determined populace with digital tools. Popular anger, amplified by transparency, can dismantle authority faster than any conventional army. The Iranian uprising is developing a new model of asymmetric warfare, a leaderless assassination doctrine. Here's what that means: no central army needed. Citizens, guided by open-source intelligence, systematically target local commanders. The regime is paralyzed, not by tanks or bombs, but by fear, confusion, and broken loyalty. This is the 21st century blueprint for toppling authoritarian regimes. It doesn't matter how many generals you have if the system that protects them is hollow from within. For decades, authoritarian regimes from Tehran to Moscow to Beijing have relied on a wall of illusion. The idea that power is permanent, that fear is unbreakable, and that loyalty is enforceable. Iran has shattered that wall. By targeting generals and their corruption networks, citizens have not only reclaimed their streets, they've reclaimed their agency, their history, and their future. Every barricade erected, every freed prisoner, every toppled general is proof that freedom is not given, it's seized. The regime's propaganda, its blackout strategies, its threats, they now highlight how panicked and impotent the state truly is. The consequences stretch far beyond Tehran. Should the regular army side with the people, we are not talking about a regime change. We are talking about the dismantling of a 40-year-old theocratic structure and the birth of a national identity built by its citizens. So what does this mean for the Iranian people? It means they've tasted power, and there's no turning back. Tehran is no longer a city of fear. Barricades are no longer just defense. They are symbols of autonomy. Police stations and generals' homes are no longer untouchable. The elite are now vulnerable in ways previously unimaginable. History will mark 2026 as the year fear shifted. The hunters became the hunted. The powerless found strength. The impossible became reality. If there's one message here, it's this: no wall of authority is unbreakable. No army, no surveillance network, no blackout, no propaganda machine can substitute for legitimacy and loyalty. And when those cracks appear, authoritarian power collapses from the inside. Iran's uprising is now a case study in revolutionary strategy, a warning to tyrants everywhere. Your generals can no longer protect you. Your money cannot guarantee loyalty. Your propaganda will be exposed. The people, armed with information and courage, will act. So here's where we stand. The calm regime's countdown is over. Tehran is faltering. Generals are falling one by one. Citizens are reclaiming stolen freedom. Police stations burning, barricades rising, and the return of pre-revolutionary symbols all mark a new era. This isn't just a political collapse. It's a spiritual, social, and historical awakening. And now, the question is for you, the viewer. What do you make of this historic moment? Do you see parallels in other parts of the world? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Support this work by liking the video. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to stay updated on this and other major global developments. Because one thing is certain, the world is watching Iran, and history is being written on its streets.